Alert, alert! Unidentified vessel approaching from bearing 227, distance 15 kilometers. The young sensor operator's voice cracked with barely contained panic as their three-fingered hands danced across the holographic interface. Commander Vrax, you need to see this. Commander Vrax unfolded his tall, lanky frame from his meditation pod, his crystalline eyes adjusting to the harsh lights of the observation post control room. Calm yourself, junior officer. What could possibly be threatening us this far north on this frozen ball of water? His mandibles clicked in mild annoyance as he glided across the room. But sir, the operator insisted, look at these readings. It's massive. And the energy signature. I've never seen anything like it. Science Officer Peel, who had been quietly analyzing ice core samples in the corner, raised her head. Her iridescent scales shimmed under the artificial lighting as she moved to join them. Let me see those readings, she requested, her naturally melodic voice carrying an undertone of curiosity. The main display screen flickered to life, showing a thermal image of what appeared to be, well, none of them were quite sure what they were looking at. The vessel, if that's what it was, stretched nearly 130 meters in length. Its bow rose like a menacing blade, ready to cut through anything in its path. Multiple decks towered above what appeared to be an armored hull, and the energy readings from its propulsion systems were off the charts. By the 7 moons, Vrax whispered, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. That's a warship if I've ever seen one. But what's it doing here? The humans assured us they had no military installations in this region. Commander, Peel interjected, her analytical mind already racing ahead. Something doesn't add up. The design is unusual for a warship. Look at the bow structure. It's not optimized for weapons systems. And I'm not detecting any traditional armament. Not detecting weapons? Peel, look at it. That thing is built like a Cronaxian battlecruiser. Those reinforced hull plates, the aggressive angles, that blade-like protrusion. What else could it be? The thermal image grew larger on their screens as the vessel continued its steady approach toward their research station. The ice sheet beneath their feet seemed to vibrate in sympathy with the distant rumbling of its engines. Junior Officer Trill, the sensor operator who'd first spotted the vessel, suddenly straightened in their chair. Sir, they're broadcasting an identification signal. It's in human standard format. Well, don't keep us in suspense. What does it say? Vrax demanded, his antennae twitching with agitation. 1 moment, sir, translating now. Trill's fingers flew across the interface. It identifies itself as USCGC Polar Star, classification heavy icebreaker. That can't be right, can it? Peel's scales shifted to a lighter shade, a sign of intense interest among her species. Icebreaker. They named their warship after breaking frozen water. It's maintaining its course directly toward us, Trill reported, their voice steadier now that they were back in familiar territory of monitoring and reporting. Current speed, 13 knots. They're cutting through the ice sheet like it's not even there. Commander Vrax paced the control room, his long legs carrying him from one end to the other in just a few strides. Send an alert to Central Command. Inform them we have an unclassified human vessel approaching our position. Request immediate instructions. He paused, mandibles working as he considered the situation. And Peel, see if you can find anything in the database about this icebreaker classification. I want to know what we're dealing with. Yes, Commander, Peel responded, already diving into the station's archives. Though I must say this is fascinating. Why would anyone need a ship specifically designed to break ice? Surely there are more efficient ways to— Ooh! Her scales flickered with excitement. Commander, you're going to want to see this. Before she could elaborate, Trill's voice cut through the tension again. Sir, we're being hailed. The human vessel is requesting direct communication. Commander Vrax took a deep breath, his crystalline eyes reflecting the approaching vessel on the main screen. Well, he said, trying to inject some confidence into his voice. I suppose we're about to get some answers. Put them through, Trill. Let's see what this icebreaker wants with our little research station. The communication screen buzzed to life, and Commander Vrax found himself face to face with a surprisingly casual-looking human. The being wore what appeared to be a thick blue uniform with multiple patches and insignias, but nothing like the militant attire Vrax had expected from a warship commander. "This is Captain Marcus Blackwood of the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Polar Star. Hope we didn't startle you folks." The human's face crinkled in what Vrax's cultural training identified as a smile. "We picked up your research station signature and thought we'd drop by to say hello. First time seeing an icebreaker." Peel stepped forward before Vrax could respond, her scientific curiosity overtaking protocol. "Captain, if I may, what exactly is the purpose of this vessel? Our sensors indicate enough power output to level a small city, hull plating thick enough to withstand direct energy weapons, and a bow structure that appears designed for ramming enemy ships." A loud, booming laugh erupted from the captain, causing several of the alien crew members to jump. "Ram ships? Oh, that's a good one. Though I suppose she does look pretty intimidating if you've never seen one before. Tell you what, why don't I give you the grand tour? We're headed your way to clear a path for some supply vessels anyway." As the massive ship drew closer, the alien crew gathered at the observation windows, their various sensory organs fixed on the approaching behemoth. The Polar Star was even more impressive up close, its red hull standing in stark contrast to the endless white of the Arctic ice. The bow rose from the water at an aggressive angle, like some ancient sea monster preparing to devour everything in its path. "Look at the wake pattern," Trill whispered in awe. It's deliberately breaking the ice. The humans are using this massive vessel to just smash through it." Science Officer Peel's scales had shifted to a deep blue of concentration as she analysed the readings. "The bow design, it's not for ramming at all. It's designed to ride up onto the ice and use the ship's own weight to crack it. Fascinating, the humans built this entire class of vessels just to deal with frozen water." The ship's massive hull groaned and creaked as it worked its way through the thick ice, the sound carrying through the observation post's structure. Each impact sent subtle vibrations through the station's foundations, causing several crew members to exchange nervous glances. "Commander," Captain Blackwood's voice came through again, "we're positioning ourselves about 1/2 kilometre from your station. Would you like to send over a delegation? Our galley just whipped up some fresh hot chocolate. Perfect for a day like this." Vrax's antennae twitched in confusion. "Hot chocolate? Is this some kind of diplomatic ritual?" "No, sir," chimed in Lieutenant Reed, their cultural expert, looking up from her datapad. "According to my research, it's a traditional human beverage consumed for pleasure, particularly in cold environments, though I'm not sure our digestive systems—" "Don't worry about that," Blackwood interrupted cheerfully. "We've got proper diplomatic refreshments too. Benefits of operating in international waters. We're equipped to handle all sorts of visitors." The massive vessel had come to a stop now, and the aliens watched in fascination as it effortlessly maintained its position in the broken ice field it had created. The thick plates of ice that had previously surrounded their station were now reduced to a jumble of smaller fragments, bobbing harmlessly in the ship's wake. "I still don't understand," Vrax admitted, both to his crew and the human captain. "You're telling me this vessel, with all its impressive engineering and power, exists solely to clear paths through ice? Not for defense, not for combat?" "Well," Captain Blackwood replied, his expression turning more serious, "she does handle search and rescue operations too. Speaking of which—" He glanced off-screen for a moment, consulting something outside their view. "Your station's latest ice readings match what we're seeing. That shelf you're set up on, it's getting a bit unstable. Might want to discuss some contingency plans while you're here." Commander Vrax felt his antennae droop slightly. Of course, the recent anomalous readings from their ice cores. Their research station's latest data had shown some concerning trends, but surely it wasn't that serious. "Well, Commander?" Peel's voice carried a note of concern as she analysed new data streaming across her screen. "I think we should accept the captain's invitation. These readings—" She paused, her scales shifting to a worried grey. "We definitely need to talk." Vrax looked back at the communications screen where Captain Blackwood waited patiently. Behind him, Vrax could see the impressive bridge of the vessel, humans moving purposefully between various stations, the whole operation running with military precision despite its supposedly peaceful mission. "Very well, Captain," Vrax decided. "Prepare to receive a delegation from our station, and thank you for the invitation." "Excellent," Blackwood beamed. "Trust me, Commander. Once you see this beauty in action up close, you'll understand why we're so proud of her. She might not be a warship, but in these waters, she's something even better." The delegation from the research station, consisting of Commander Vrax, Science Officer Peel, and Lieutenant Reed, found themselves standing in what the humans called the mess hall of the Polar Star. The room was warm, filled with the strange aroma of what humans called coffee, and surprisingly casual compared to their expectations of a vessel this size. "So let me get this straight," Captain Blackwood said, gesturing with his mug. "You thought we were approaching in a warship because the bow is pointy?" "Well, when you put it that way," Vrax clicked his mandibles in embarrassment, "it does sound rather foolish, but you must understand, on our worlds, any vessel of this size and power output would be strictly military." A chorus of laughter erupted from the assembled crew members. Chief Engineer Rodriguez wiped tears from her eyes. "Wait until they hear about the backup power plant. Commander, this ship's got enough juice to power a small city because breaking through 6-foot-thick ice takes a lot of oomph." 6 feet? Lieutenant Reed consulted her translator. "Nearly 2 meters of solid ice, and you deliberately drive through it?" "Sometimes even thicker," Blackwood nodded, clearly enjoying their visitors' reactions. "This old girl can handle ice up to 21 feet thick if we have to, though we try to avoid the really thick stuff unless it's an emergency." Peel's scales had shifted to a rainbow pattern of excitement as she absorbed this information. But surely there must be more efficient ways to transport materials? Submersible vessels that go under the ice, perhaps, or aerial transport? "Cost-effective is the key word here," Rodriguez explained. "Sure, we could use submarines or cargo planes, but when you need to move thousands of tons of supplies, nothing beats a good old-fashioned surface ship. That's where we come in, clearing the way for the cargo vessels, maintaining shipping lanes, ensuring research stations like yours can get their supplies." "Speaking of research," Blackwood interjected, pulling up a holographic display of Earth's polar regions, "let's talk about why we're really here. Your station's been monitoring some concerning changes in the ice shelf structure, right?" Before anyone could respond, an excited voice came from the doorway. "Captain, you're not going to believe what we just—" "Oh." The young ensign stopped short at the sight of the alien visitors. "Sorry, sir. Didn't realize we had company. Come on in, Ensign Park. What's got you so excited?" The ensign practically bounced into the room, tablet in hand. "We just got the new satellite imagery of the Ross ice shelf and, well, maybe our visitors would find this interesting too." As Park pulled up the images, Vrax noticed something odd about his uniform. "Excuse me, Ensign, but why does your clothing patch show a cartoon bird wearing protective eyewear?" Another round of laughter filled the room. "That's our mascot, sir," Park beamed. "Penny the Protection Penguin, because, you know, we work in penguin territory." "Penguin," Reed's translator seemed to struggle with the word. "Another of your Earth vessels." Rodriguez nearly choked on her coffee. "Oh no, they're birds. Little flightless birds that live down here. About yay high." She held her hand at waist level. "Walk funny. Swim like torpedoes. They're basically the local welcoming committee." Peel's scales cycled through several colors of confusion. "You named your military mascot after a flightless bird?" "Not military," Blackwood corrected gently. "Coast Guard. We're a maritime service, yes, but our primary mission is safety and rescue. Speaking of which," he gestured to Park's tablet, "show them what you found, Ensign." The images displayed showed vast stretches of ice with complex overlay patterns that Vrax didn't fully understand, but even he could see the massive cracks forming in what should have been solid shelf ice. "This is why we diverted to your location," Blackwood's voice had turned serious. "That crack system is developing faster than predicted. Your station is here," He pointed to a spot on the map. "And these stress patterns suggest that the entire section could calve within days," Peel finished, her scales paling to a worried white. "Our model suggested we had months." "Welcome to Earth's climate in the 21st century, Rodriguez sighed. "Things are changing faster than anyone's models can keep up with. But that's why we're here. Getting research stations and their crews out of trouble is part of our job description." "You mean this vessel also serves as a rescue ship?" Vrax's antennae twitched in surprise. "But its design is so aggressive." "Have you ever tried to rescue someone from Arctic waters surrounded by ice floes?" Blackwood raised an eyebrow. "Sometimes being aggressive with the ice is exactly what saving lives requires. In fact—" A sudden shudder ran through the ship, strong enough to rattle the coffee cups on the table. Vrax noticed the human crew members exchanging glances. "Speaking of ice," Rodriguez checked her tablet. "Cap, we're getting some movement in the shelf. Bigger than the models predicted. Might want to move this conversation to the bridge." "Already?" Blackwood was on his feet in an instant, all casual demeanor replaced with professional focus. "All right, folks. Looks like we might get to demonstrate exactly why an icebreaker's design is the way it is. Commander Vrax, would you and your team care to observe from the bridge? Might want to contact your station too. Tell them to begin emergency preparations, just in case." As they hurried through the corridors, Vrax found himself re-evaluating everything he thought he knew about human vessels. This ship, which his training would have classified as a medium-weight warship on any other world, was instead a complex rescue vessel, a supply line maintainer, and apparently now their potential salvation from a crumbling ice shelf. "Commander," Peel whispered as they climbed to the bridge, "I believe we may have seriously underestimated the humans' approach to engineering." "How so?" "Well," her scales flickered with amused appreciation, "who else would look at a frozen ocean and decide the solution was to build a ship specifically designed to break it into smaller pieces?" Another rumble shook the ship, this one lasting longer than the first. Above them, they could hear the crew rushing to stations, and Captain Blackwood's voice calling out orders. "I have a feeling," Vrax responded dryly, "we're about to find out exactly why they built it this way." The Polar Star's bridge hummed with activity as Captain Blackwood strode to the command station, his guests close behind. Through the reinforced windows they could see the Arctic twilight had turned an ominous grey, heavy clouds rolling in with unexpected speed. "Status report," Blackwood called out, his voice carrying that peculiar human quality of being both calm and urgent simultaneously. "Barometric pressure dropping like a rock, sir," First Officer Martinez announced from her station. "Wind speeds increasing, currently at 45 knots and rising. Temperature dropping faster than forecast." "Ice shelf monitoring station 7 just went dark," Ensign Park added, fingers flying across his console. "Seismic sensors showing increased activity along the primary fault line." Commander Vrax watched in fascination as the human crew worked with practiced efficiency. Gone was the casual atmosphere from the mess hall, replaced by what he now recognized as the same professional focus his own military crews displayed during crisis situations. "Commander?" Peel's voice shook slightly as she studied the environmental readings. "The station. Our models were wrong. The ice shelf isn't just unstable, it's—" A tremendous crack split the air, loud enough to be heard even through the ship's heavy hull. On the main display, red warning indicators bloomed across the ice shelf map like spreading cracks in glass. "Multiple fractures developing," Rodriguez reported from the engineering station. "That whole section of shelf is going to go, and it's going to go soon. Sir, their research station is right in the middle of it." Blackwood turned to Vrax, his expression grave. "Commander, I'm officially recommending immediate evacuation of your facility. That ice shelf is about to calve, and when it does, anything on top of it is going down with it." Vrax's antennae quivered with distress. "We have 37 personnel and critical research materials. Our evacuation vessels are rated for ice conditions, but not a storm of this magnitude." "That's why we're here," Blackwood smiled grimly. Martinez, bring us about. Park, get me a channel to the station. Rodriguez, I want full power to the bow thrusters. We're going to need every bit of muscle this old girl's got. Another crack rang out, followed by a deep groaning sound that seemed to come from the ice itself. The alien visitors watched in a mixture of horror and amazement as massive fissures began appearing in the once solid ice field, spreading with frightening speed. "Station, this is Polar Star," Blackwood's voice cut through the chaos. "Begin immediate evacuation procedures. We're going to clear you a path to open water, but you need to move fast." Lieutenant Reed's translator squawked as she received messages from the station. "They're initiating emergency protocols now, but Commander, the ice is already breaking up between us and them." "Watch and learn." Rodriguez grinned from her station, though her eyes remained intensely focused on her readouts. "This is exactly what this ship was built for. Captain—" "Take us in," Blackwood ordered. "Full power to the forward hull heaters. Show our guests why we gave this ship such an aggressive design." The Polar Star's engines roared to life, sending vibrations through the entire structure. Vrax watched in astonishment as the massive vessel began moving purposefully toward the rapidly deteriorating ice field, its reinforced bow rising slightly as it encountered the first major ice sheet. "Impact in 3, 2, 1, Martinez counted down. The crash when they hit the thick ice was tremendous, but the ship barely shuddered. Instead, it rode up onto the ice sheet, its immense weight pressing down until the frozen barrier cracked with a sound like artillery fire. The broken pieces were pushed aside by the hull's specialized design, creating a clear channel in their wake. "Holy crystalline matrices," Peel breathed, her scales shifting through patterns of awe. "They're not just breaking the ice, they're deliberately engineering an escape route." "Incoming weather front," Park called out. "Storm cell moving faster than predicted. Visibility dropping rapidly." As if to emphasize his point, snow began whipping past the windows, the wind howling like some ancient earth beast. The growing storm was turning the Arctic twilight into a grey wall of swirling ice crystals. "Switching to enhanced imaging," Martinez announced, and the main screen lit up with a false color view of their surroundings. The research station was clearly visible, now sitting on what appeared to be an increasingly unstable island of ice. "Multiple structural failures detected in the ice shelf," Rodriguez called out. "Major calving event imminent." "Station reports they're loaded and ready to move," Reed translated urgently. "But Commander, their vessels aren't designed for this kind of ice breaking, even with the path we're creating." Another tremendous crack split the air, and on the screen they watched in horror as a massive fissure opened up, starting from the edge of the shelf and racing toward the station with frightening speed. "New plan!" Blackwood's voice cut through the chaos. "Martinez, bring us in close. We're going to have to do this the hard way. Commander Vrax, tell your people to prepare for emergency evacuation directly onto our vessel." "Onto your vessel?" Vrax's translator nearly squealed with his surprise. "But the ice conditions are exactly why this ship has a reinforced hull and deployable rescue equipment," Blackwood finished. "Rodriguez, I want emergency power to the bow thrusters. We're going to have to hold position against this ice movement. Martinez, coordinate with the deck crew for emergency evacuation procedures. Park, get me a direct line to their evacuation coordinator." The Polar Star surged forward again, its massive bulk shouldering aside ice floes as if they were toys. The humans worked their stations with intense concentration, making constant adjustments as the ship fought against both the moving ice and the strengthening storm. "Look at the power output," Peel marveled, watching the engineering displays. "They're using enough energy to power a small city, just to keep us stable against the ice flow." "Incoming!" Rodriguez shouted as another crack rang out, this one accompanied by a deep rumbling that seemed to shake the very ocean. Through the swirling snow they watched as a massive section of the ice shelf began to break away. The research station, their home for the past 3 years, was now perched precariously on an ice island that was rapidly becoming unstable. "This is why you built this ship like a warship," Vrax suddenly realized, watching the humans work. "Not for combat, but because sometimes saving lives means fighting the very elements themselves. Now you're getting it, Blackwood grinned, though his eyes never left the tactical display. Rodriguez, give me everything those engines have got. We've got 37 scientists to save, and I don't intend to leave anyone behind. As another tremendous crack split the darkening Arctic sky, the Polar Star's engines roared in defiance of the storm, ice, and encroaching darkness. The race to save the research station was on, and Vrax finally understood why humans had built something so powerful for such a peaceful purpose. The next 20 minutes aboard the Polar Star were unlike anything Commander Vrax had ever experienced in his centuries of space travel. The massive vessel shuddered and groaned as it fought against nature itself, its reinforced hull serving as a barrier between 37 alien scientists and the hungry Arctic waters below. Deploying rescue bridle, Martinez's voice rang out over the howling wind. Station crew, stand by for evacuation protocols. Through the driving snow, massive mechanical arms extended from the Polar Star's sides, creating a protective corridor between the ship and the rapidly disintegrating ice shelf where the research station perched. The engineering feat alone was impressive, but watching the humans execute it in near-zero visibility conditions was nothing short of miraculous. Amazing, Peel whispered, her scales flickering between patterns of awe and scientific fascination. They're using the ship's own wake turbulence to create a relatively calm zone for the evacuation. 15 meters to optimal position, Rodriguez called out from her station. Engineering reports all systems at 110% capacity. 110? Reed's translator squeaked. But that's not mathematically possible. Captain Blackwood's laugh carried across the bridge. Welcome to human engineering, Lieutenant. Rodriguez, give me full power to the bow thrusters. Martinez, prepare to compensate for shelf movement. Let's show our guests how we dance with icebergs. The Polar Star's engines roared louder, their deep thrumming resonating through the hull as the ship pressed forward. Through the enhanced imaging displays, they watched as the vessel's specialized hull design quite literally carved a protective harbor out of the ice field. First group of evacuees moving across now, Park announced. 10 personnel, critical research materials in tow. Vrax watched in amazement as his crew members made their way across the evacuation bridges. What had seemed like unnecessarily militant design choices now revealed their true purpose. Every aggressive angle and reinforced plate working in concert to protect the fragile beings trusting their lives to this vessel. Massive structural failure developing in sectors 7 through 12. Rodriguez's voice cut through the controlled chaos. That whole section is about to go. The ice shelf chose that moment to demonstrate her warning. With a sound like planetary artillery, a crack wider than the Polar Star itself split the ice directly behind the research station. The entire structure shuddered as its foundation began to tilt. Second evacuation group, move, 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 Blackwood commanded, his voice carrying through the ship's external speakers. Rodriguez, give me everything she's got. We need to hold position. Sir, the engines are already at 115%. Then make it 120. We're not losing anyone today. The ship's engines screamed in protest as they pumped out even more power, fighting against the inexorable movement of millions of tons of ice. Vrax felt his antennae vibrating in sympathy with the tremendous forces at play. Look at the power readings, Peel gestured to her console, her voice filled with wonder. They're channeling enough energy to power a small spacecraft just to hold position against the ice flow. Third group crossing now, Park reported. Only 12 personnel remaining at the station. Another thunderous crack split the air, and on the displays, they watched as the ice shelf began its final collapse. The research station, their home for so long, started to slide toward the widening abyss. Last group, emergency evacuation protocols. Blackwood's voice carried the full weight of command. Forget the non-essential equipment. Move, move, move. Through the swirling snow, the final group of scientists sprinted across the evacuation bridges. Behind them, the station's outer structures began to break apart as the ice shelf surrendered to gravity's pull. Everyone's aboard, Martinez announced just as the last evacuee crossed the threshold. Retracting rescue equipment now. Full reverse, Blackwood ordered. Get us clear of the collapse zone. The Polar Star's engines changed pitch as the ship began backing away from the disintegrating ice shelf. Through the forward windows, they watched as their research station, along with thousands of tons of ice, crashed into the dark Arctic waters. All personnel accounted for, Reed reported, checking her tablet. No injuries. We did it. A cheer went up from the human crew, though their hands never left their stations. Vrax noticed that even in celebration, they maintained their professional focus. Captain, Commander Vrax stepped forward, his antennae quivering with emotion. Thank you seems inadequate. Blackwood smiled, though his eyes remained fixed on the tactical displays as they navigated clear of the danger zone. All in a day's work, Commander, though I hope this helps explain why we build our peaceful vessels to be so robust. Indeed, Peel agreed, her scales still showing patterns of amazement. We mistook necessary strength for aggressive intent. Though I must say, watching your ship fight the ice, perhaps we weren't entirely wrong about its warrior spirit. Ha! Rodriguez called from her station. That's the thing about the Polar Star. She may not be a warship, but she's definitely a fighter. Speaking of which, Captain, engine readings are returning to normal parameters. We can maintain this course indefinitely. Excellent, Blackwood nodded. Set course for McMurdo Station. Let's get our guests somewhere warm and dry. He turned to Vrax with a grin. And maybe now we can finally have that hot chocolate I promised you earlier. And so, esteemed members of the High Command, Commander Vrax concluded his report, standing before the holographic projection of his superiors, I must recommend an immediate revision to our classification of human maritime vessels. The gathered council members shifted in their seats, their various appendages and sensory organs showing signs of both amusement and disbelief. High Commander Zell, her crystalline form catching the light, leaned forward. Let me ensure I understand correctly, Commander. Her melodic voice carried a note of incredulity. The humans built what amounts to a warship, to fight frozen water. With all due respect, High Commander, Science Officer Peel interjected, her scales shimmering with enthusiasm. Calling it a warship is like calling a surgical laser a weapon. The humans didn't build it for war. They built it because sometimes saving lives requires moving mountains, or in this case, breaking them. Besides, Lieutenant Reed added, checking her notes, according to Captain Blackwood, the Polar Star is considered, and I quote, a bit small compared to the new ones they're building. A murmur of surprise rippled through the council chamber. Bigger ones? High Commander Zell's crystalline structure flickered with surprise. Why would they need... Because that's how humans approach problems, Vrax explained, his antennae twitching with barely suppressed amusement. When faced with a frozen ocean, they don't look for a way around it. They don't try to avoid it. They just build a bigger ship and break right through it. And this doesn't strike anyone else as slightly concerning? One of the council members asked. Oh, it's absolutely terrifying, Peel agreed cheerfully, her scales showing patterns of mirth. But not for the reasons we originally thought. Just imagine what they could do if they actually decided to build warships. I believe, Vrax concluded, that we have been fundamentally misunderstanding human engineering philosophy. They don't build things to look aggressive. They build them to get the job done, regardless of what stands in their way. Even if what stands in their way is an entire ocean's worth of ice. The council chamber fell silent for a moment before High Commander Zell spoke again. Very well. I will approve the recommended revisions to our classification systems. Though I must admit, Commander, this may be the first time in our history that we've had to create a new category just for vessels that fight weather. If I may suggest a final addendum, Vrax added, his mandibles clicking in what his crew now recognized as a smile. Perhaps we should also revise our first contact protocols. Sometimes it seems a ship approaching with an aggressive design and enough power to level a city is just humanity's way of coming to help. As the council members digested this information, somewhere in the frozen seas of Earth, the Polar Star continued its endless dance with the ice, its powerful hull breaking paths through the frozen Arctic waters. Not for war, not for conquest, but simply because sometimes the most peaceful of missions require the strongest of tools. And if any other alien species happened to mistake it for a warship, well, they'd learn the same lesson Vrax and his crew had. On Earth, sometimes the most impressive displays of power come in service of peace.